My guest today is Chris Shannon, teacher at the Governor's School of English and Theater from 1997 to 2002. How are you doing today, Ms. Shannon?
I am fantastic. Please call me Chris.
Chris, very good. Chris, can you just give us a catch-up from 2002? What have you been doing since you left the Governor's School?
Oh, goodness. Well, when I left the governor's school, I left teaching because it was the best school in the world to teach at. And if I wasn't teaching there, teaching didn't make sense anymore. Moved to the place I always wanted to be, which was New England and Boston. Married some random stat teacher who's known for M&Ms and salsa. Landed in workforce development. Worked in workforce development for roughly 12 to 15 years, doing youth workforce programming at the regional, the career center, and then the state level. And then I landed a job at the Boston Fed, worked there for 5.5 years, and then was lured out to lovely Denver, Colorado, where we are now, to work at the National Endowment for Financial Education.
What sort of work do you do there at the NEFE?
At NAFE, we work on championing effective financial education. So our goal is to democratize financial education. So it's not for the affluent who can afford college financial planners or financial counselors, that information is out there so everyone can live their best financial life. My specific role there is overseeing strategic partnerships, communications, and marketing.
I definitely think that there's a missing component to high school education, which is just financial literacy. Do you sense that as well? And are there any trends to try to change that?
Yeah, so this is, I just want to make sure that I do the qualifier. I'm speaking on behalf of myself,
Of course.
not the National Endowment for Financial Education. I think our CEO would probably have a very different answer.
Sure.
I don't necessarily believe it should be mandated. I just think if it's done, it should be done well
Hmm.
and with intentionality. I do remember the seniors at Governor's School complaining that they're like, how come we don't have a life course? Especially when they went to college and they come back and they do the showcase. And they say, teach me how to grocery shop, teach me how to change a tire, teach me how to balance a checkbook. These were all things that they felt that they were so book smart, but so not life smart in a sense. And I always remember that. And of course, my own, we talk about financial role models a lot, and you can have very positive financial role models. You can have very negative ones too. My mom was like the queen of that. She was like shop therapy queen.
Hmm.
I feel bad. I don't have money. So I'm going to go out and spend money on me because I'm worth it. And then I'm going to get the bill, and then I'm going to fall into depression. So I'm going to go out and get more stuff to make me feel better. It's just this endless cycle. One of the things that we're examining right now, Ian, is really taking a step back from financial education and the things that we've always traditionally taught, like the need to be banked in a formal institution, investing, saving for retirement, having an emergency savings, and really looking at, are those truly universal benchmarks of financial well-being across different types of communities, or are these markers perpetuating a dominant class and the values of a dominant race? So do we really need a formal bank, and when there are other cultures that have lending circles or savings circles? Retirement, there are quite a few other cultures where the expectation is that the children would take care of.
Hmm.
Period. There's just no question. That is your retirement plan. You invested in your kids, and then they have to invest back in you. And if we are perpetuating financial institutions, is it really the individual that benefits, or is it the financial institution? There are two sides to the coin. I just want to add
Yeah.
something in. One, of course, is building up the individual, making sure the individual has the information, the knowledge, and the access that they need to live that best financial life. But there's also the systems piece. And
Hmm.
so many people forget about that. I can't tell you how many times I've already heard in this recession, well, if people just had emergency savings. And we talk about emergency savings being 3 to 6 months of income.
Hmm.
I'm like, dude, it's been 6 months. So even if you had had that
Yeah.
and you have no job right now, you'd still be in dire straits. So stop shaming individuals for things that systems also play a role in. It's not like you live in isolation. There's so many things that impact your finances. You can't.
Totally. Well, I wanted to ask you what kind of led you from your teaching role into wanting to help people with financial education? Like, what was that inner pull for you?
It's the common thread throughout everything is really helping young adults make informed choices. So one of the things that I prided myself in at Governor School, and maybe too arrogantly, was that I would get students come in, and when they came in as freshmen, roughly 95% of them, I'm going to be an actor, you know. And over the course of 4 grueling years with me, there were more who said, directing may be my gig, or playwriting, or, stage managing, tech design. They realized that there were so many different roles that come together. And that's really what theater is, project management, where you're taking a lot of different disparate talents and bringing them together for a unified vision. And I love that I did that. And folks then pursued those things, whereas they would have come in, they would have had the same acting experience as everyone else in the school, they would have graduated, maybe done some college theater, maybe, and then that would have been it. So I think by extension, some of them found other roles of interest to them that may not have been an option in a more traditional non-governor school environment. But when I went into workforce development, it was all about college and career readiness. Once again, just making sure you have all the information you need to make an informed choice about your career first, and then look at college as the tool to get that education and training you need for that career. So that's been the common thread, college and career readiness, doing that, in a variety of settings, working with marginalized populations usually, and creating tools that will help them. And then finally, at NEFI, it's the same thing, making sure that populations, but specifically young adults 14 to 24, have the information they need to live their best.
Got it. Going backward in time now, tell us the story of how you first learned of the governor's school and what that hiring process was like.
Oh my goodness. So it's so funny you should say this, because a couple of posts had just come up on Facebook that just once again reminded me of this story. So once again, it's experience as a harsh teacher, Ian. So I was a teacher at George Wythe. I don't know if a lot of students do that. And after 3 years, you get recertified when you're a new teacher. And I had done all the professional development, got all my points. I overshot, of course, because we're all overachievers at Governor School. To find out, because I didn't have my master's, none of it counted. So I had to go get my master's. They didn't care what I got a degree in. So I thought, I'll show you. I'm going to get a degree in directing. But that's done so well for me. One of those jobs that they don't want you to have a degree in. Talk about, in terms of like career planning, the worst thing you could do is it'd be like being an artist, where it's like, they say, well, what have you directed? Well, nothing, but I took some really neat classes, That's not going to land you a job in like off-Broadway. So I did that. But one of the other grad students in the directing program was at the time he was dating a woman named Helen Anagoulias. We were getting close to graduation, 97, and I didn't have a job lined up. I'm like, even Richmond was like, yeah, we don't know if we want you back now. I'm like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. And so Adam said, oh, well, nobody knows this yet, but Helen and I are getting married, and she's going to leave by the governor's. So I did. I found out much later that actually it was split on me. Half of them wanted me and half of them didn't. And the person who was the deciding vote was Pat Taylor. She was very passionate about wanting to bring me on board, and because of that, I got a job there. And it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
That's a great story. Can you tell, what would you tell people who are becoming teachers and having their first class as a teacher this year and this incoming year, that now with COVID and everything, what kind of words of advice would you give them?
Oh, that's a great question. And to me, it feels two-part. although they are related. So the first part is, what should new teachers know? You go through high school and you go through college and you get your master's degree, and then you land in the classroom. It's kind of your first work experience with no prior work experience. And that's when you realize they didn't teach you anything that you really needed to know. They don't teach you how to deal with parents who are absent, and not engaged, and understanding the reasons why they're not engaged, rather than once again kind of gaming them. Oh, you're such a terrible parent, as opposed to, oh, you're working 3 jobs to try and make ends meet in a very expensive city, and what can I do to make that more easier for you? And I learned that the hard way when I was in Richmond. I kid you not, I had a 17-year-old student who was applying for emancipation because her mother was pimping her for drug money. And I was like, I've got nothing. I have no idea what you're going through. And because I was always like, if you ever want to talk, come talk to me. I bet I can relate to just about anything you've got. And that was like cold water in my face. I'm like, yeah, I cannot relate to so trying to understand that and having compassion for yourself, for your limited experience. And I think teachers go into teaching, they love learning so much. And what they eventually realize is you learn so much more from your students, especially if you open yourself up that they've experienced and the expertise that they bring to the table. I think bad teachers are the ones that think that they are evolved better than students. And the really good ones are the ones who kind of respect you because, I'm not better than you are. I just have different knowledge and experience. And so do you. And I can learn from that. I mean, governor's school, I work with the smartest freaking students in the world. Talk about intimidating. Oh, here we go. Here's a special guest student. Everybody say hi to Mr. Rothman.
Hello.
Hello.
But Ian didn't prepare any questions for you, so you have to go away.
Is there anything that you want to talk about or tell people that I haven't asked about?
I could talk about governor school stories all day long, but I feel compelled to talk about the story of Miss Shannon and Mr. Rothman, or as people love to call it, Mr. Shannon. So I don't know how many of you know the story. I know that stories have floated around, but we taught with each other for 5 years before we started dating, almost 5 years, 4.5. And when we started dating, we felt we could not let anybody know. Like, does one student know your business? Then it's like, oh, are they in this meeting together because they're going to hook up? Or, oh, I saw them in the copy room together. And we're like, oh my God, adult up, but that'd be from the other teachers, not even the students. So we did our best to kind of sneak around. Occasionally we'd run into students or teachers like out in Perrytown or whatnot. And then fast forward to May, Memorial Day weekend, I bring him to meet my parents in Delaware. And we drive. I have a dog. We're driving up 95. We get to a rest stop, the Maryland House. And I'm like, I've got to go to the bathroom. And I'm sure the dog does too. You walk the dog, I'll run in. It's like at this point, 7 o'clock in the morning because we're going to avoid DC traffic. I get out of the car, I go into the rest area, and I look around, and it's freaking filled with governor's school students. I'm like, holy shit. Turn around without going to the bathroom, race back to the car, get back in the car. They're governor's students. Turns out they were on their field trip to New York. The seniors were. It was a senior trip. So I'm like, I'm in Maryland, and I'm still running into governor's school students. Fast forward, I leave Richmond. I move to Boston. Mr. Rothman wants to help me move. At that point, we had broken up. I'm like, okay, weird, but he used to help. So did GT Knuckles, so thank you, GT. He takes me up to Boston. We get up to Boston, and then right before he leaves, he proposes. I say yes, and he says, but I'm going to go back and teach at the governor's school because I promised I would for a year. We were actually married for 6 months before we even lived together. I do not recommend that. So he goes back to make the staff announcement. So they're in their pre-staff meeting, part of the teacher trainings and things that they do for the 2 weeks before the students come back. Ainsley McLeod, the French teacher who was in charge of, the sunshine, birthdays and big events, made like a little bit of an announcement. Ainsley sets the stage. Everyone's like, oh, I wonder what the big announcement is. Charles comes up, you're all aware that Chris Shannon, is left here. And he's going, and everyone's just like, yep, yep, uh-huh. And he's like, and so we're getting married. And there's just dead silence. And then Tom McDonald in the back of the room goes, yeah. And that was it. It looked like he had dropped a bomb on the faculty. And Brenda did interviews with teachers afterwards for the tape for me, kind of like supposedly the congratulations. I didn't get a lot of it, congratulations. I got like from Phil Tharp, I didn't see this coming. I don't know how you hid this from me. I did not see this coming. It was just, they were just like totally shell struck. I will never forget that. It's the funniest damn thing in the world. And I just wanted to share it with all the alum.
Well, you clearly filled the faculty. Were any of the students the wiser?
So I ran into some at some alum events afterwards, and they're like, oh, yeah, we knew.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Chris.
No, thank you for doing this, Ian. This
My
is
pleasure.
great. I'm really enjoying the interviews.